a simple 30-minute painting with a very high cute factor. In today's beginner-friendly art tutorial, I'll show you how to paint mushrooms using the watercolor medium gouache. Hey gang, welcome back. Your friend Shayda Campbell here with another artsy-fartsy tutorial, and we are painting mushrooms using gouache today because guess what? That's what you guys voted for. The topic of the final video of the month is now decided by a vote over on Patreon. I put out a schedule there every month, and this is what the September one looked like. If you want to see the schedule for October, which is up now, and vote for the October video, just head over there and sign up for free. Or sign up for $3 a month and become a member and get all the bonus content. Patreon.com/Shayda Campbell. Okay, let's get started. If you haven't used gouache before, it is a wonderful medium, and if you love watercolor, I think you're going to love it because it's a highly opaque water-based medium. Comes in little tubes like this. You don't need a whole lot of colors. Today we're using white, olive green, a brown, and a red. I'm just mixing mine up on some old plates. I've got a couple glasses of clean water, my usual watercolor brushes, and paper towel for blotting my brush on. So these supplies are the same. You just need like something to mix your paint on, some palette, and then the gouache itself. And I'm only going to use 4 or 5 colors today. Grab a round brush, probably something a little smaller, like a number 3 or 4, since we're going to work quite small for these cute mushrooms. And then ta-da, grab a piece of paper. I'm not working in the sketchbook that I've got sitting there. I'm actually going to switch it up, and we'll do our painting on a page from an old book. I got this book for $1, and then I use it every time I want to paint on a sheet of text, which doesn't really come up that often. But this is a great way for you to see how wonderfully opaque gouache can be, and it's just cute. So let's get started. I took the page out, I used a bit of washi tape to place it on top of a sketchbook, and then I'm going to start mixing my gouache. If I put a little bit of the white gouache in my palette, you can see it's about the consistency of toothpaste, and then I want to start mixing in a whole lot of water because when that paint goes on the page, it needs to be the same consistency as water. It needs to be liquidy. You don't use gouache right out of the tubes, just like watercolors. That would be such a waste, and you'll be amazed at how wonderfully opaque they remain even with quite a bit of water mixed in. Now, if they're transparent, you've mixed in too much water, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can use them that way, but just for our purposes today, for painting on top of the text, we definitely want them opaque. And the colors I have here, very simple: olive green, Van Dyke brown, and spectrum red, and then the white. So let's begin. You can take a pencil if this makes you more comfortable and just draw a couple lines where your mushroom stems are going to sit, and then we're going to jump right into our painting. So with a number 4 round brush or smaller, or larger if you're crazy, just kidding, whatever you're comfortable with, grab some of that white gouache, and we are just going to paint 2 very perfectly imperfect mushroom stems. You're not going for symmetry here. Make one a little larger, one a bit smaller, one could be thicker, one thinner, you know, make them a little different, give them a bit of a curve, and then come back in with that white gouache and give them a little fanning out towards the top. That just gives that mushroom stem shape. I'm also going to place like a very thin line, curved line across the top there. And then we'll rinse our brush and we'll pick up some of that spectrum red. Now, if the red just looks too bright to you, you don't like bright colors, you love a muted color like your girl Shayda, mix a bit of that brown into the red and it'll give a much more sort of autumny, muted red, a moody red. And we're going to place the mushroom caps on top of the stems. You can sort of sketch them in first if that makes you more comfortable, or just kind of work out the shape as you're painting. Did you know there's a place where you can get extra Shayda Campbell content? Yes, I release an extra video every month over on my Patreon site. And this month we did a comprehensive watercolor tree tutorial just in time for autumn. Head to patreon.com/Shayda Campbell to become a member for just $3 a month or $33 for the entire year. Not feeling subscriptions at the moment? You can now purchase individual bonus items like my watercolor worksheets in my new Patreon storefront. So I'm still working out the shape of the 2 red mushroom caps here. I added a bit more brown to the red and darkened the color slightly. And then I'm just going along until I'm happy with the shape. I also wanted to go over the stems one more time. You could just see a little bit of text kind of through the gouache. So that just means it needs another coat, no big deal. And then I am taking the Van Dyke brown, a good amount of water mixed in there so it just flows off that brush really easily and beautifully. And I'm putting a brown mushroom cap on that third mushroom. Then I mixed a bit of white into the brown, put a few spots of lighter color and just let that kind of blend. And I continued to put more brown into the red to darken it so I could do a bit of shading on those first two mushrooms. But those are looking good, I think. I'm going to rinse my brush, pick up a bit of the olive green, and I'm going to start placing some long wispy brush strokes, some grass, all around the mushroom stems here in order to frame them and just make everything look really cute. And the green and red are of course complementary colors, which means they are opposite each other on the color wheel. So anytime you're using those opposite colors, it just makes your piece of art really pop. I also did a curving line up here on the right, and I have taken some of that green just in the tip of my little round brush, and I'm starting to paint a tiny little fern, which is really just made up of all these little brush marks, or just think of them as mini little leaf shapes. You just keep going, making each fern frond a little longer than the one before, and you keep moving out and down. And fern comes together actually really simply, even though it looks so intricate when it's done. And actually, your ferns don't even have to be that complicated. We'll do two more up above on the left here that are just a curving line and then a whole bunch of little brush marks, sort of pairs of oval-shaped brush marks on each side. I'm going to mix white into my olive green, and then we'll do another one of these guys, curving line, and then just little pairs of leaves, messy little brush marks. That's all it takes. I'm going to continue that one down in between the two mushrooms, and then I'm going to add more and more little grassy brush strokes. This is coming together really nicely, and this is the type of wonderful little art project that takes, I don't know, maybe half an hour. It can be so simple, and good art doesn't always have to take days and weeks and months. It can just be a fun thing that you do for yourself in that hour while your kid is napping. Once you're done with all the ferns and the grass, we are going to rinse that brush and then come back to your white, and you just pick up a little bit of that liquidy gouache, and we are going to start making tiny little brush marks all over the top of these mushroom caps. So you can see I'm doing some that are really tiny, and then I cluster a few of the tiny ones, and then I make some marks that are a little larger. They are sort of circular, but they don't need to be perfect circles. They can just be messy marks. Everything in nature is perfectly imperfect. Everything is weird and wonky, and so that's what we're trying to capture here. All right, we are almost at the end of our sweet little project here, and the last thing I need to do is mix up a little bit of gray. So I'm mixing white with my Van Dyke brown, and then I mixed a bit of gray in. If you don't have gray gouache, I don't, you can just use gray watercolor paint, a little bit of Payne's gray in a watercolor tube form, and mixes in beautifully. And I'm just putting some little gray shading on these mushroom stems and the underside of the cap. And of course you're thinking, but you already painted all that grass. And it's like, yeah, I should have done this first. This should have been done pre-grass and ferns, but I didn't think about it. So voila, we did a bit of shading. I went over the grass in some areas, and then I'll go back in with a little bit of green and just touch up some of those grassy areas. And actually here I mixed a bit of gray into the green to darken it, just like I wanted a lighter green before, I wanted a darker green as well. So you can do a lot with just a few tubes, a few colors. And that is that. Our sweet little gouache mushrooms are complete, and they didn't even take an hour to paint. Thank you so much for watching today, friends. If you love this content, you want to see more, and you want to support me without spending any money, just please hit that subscribe button before you go.